So we're going to get started. So what's interesting is today might be a review for some of you, either because you've taken 1 million personality surveys, and that can be quite draining because I think there's like 1,000 of them out there, and every single one of them says this is more accurate or this works, this doesn't work. I've never had a personality test that covers everything that I really need it to be. And so we'll talk about this personality survey in a bit. Or the second thing is I've actually given this to several of you, whether through 20s and 30s teaching or high school, or been an intern before, things like that. So just a couple things with this. If you want to kind of turn to page 5.1. The personality, what is a personality? It's a complex of characteristics that distinguish an individual. So there's been some people talked about it's your soul, which I don't necessarily follow. Some people says it's your mind. Some people says it's your characteristics, it's your preferences, it's your likes, your dislikes. It's kind of a combination of a lot of things, but it's one of the few characteristics that kind of define you or separates you from other aspects. And so this isn't a spiritual gifts. This isn't a strengths or weaknesses kind of personality test. That's something different. This is more of the kind of DNA or the foundational stuff that you tend to gravitate towards. So you think a certain way, partly because of your personality. They've kind of boxed everyone into like 4 groups. And we'll get to those 4 groups in a bit. But your personality affects 2 things, right there in the page 5.1, right in the middle, how you relate to others, and then how you respond to situations. Usually people, even if it's the exact same situation, responds differently based on their personality. So if you have more of a personality that is more people-oriented or relationship-oriented, you probably wouldn't respond as harsh to someone criticizing you than someone who's more direct, more of a direct kind of person that they have no problem and they don't necessarily look in or care about tone. So we'll talk all about that. But I do want to say that all personalities are equal. So there's, raise your hand if you've done the Enneagram. Mm-hmm. Okay, most of you have done that, yep. So that's something a little different. Enneagram, I like that because it's about weaknesses. It's kind of really focused on your weaknesses. This is more general than that. So the history of personality tests, if you kind of go in the back, the very back at 532, it kind of shares the history of them. But basically, for centuries, there's this great Greek philosopher, and he kind of came up with these 4 personality types. He based it on people's blood, but found out later that that's not necessarily accurate, but the personality is still stuck. How many have heard like sanguine, melancholy? That's the term that he uses for that. So over thousands of years, different psychologists and sociologists have used kind of this reference of these 4 basic personality groups. And even some of them, like the Myers-Briggs, they take the 4 basic personality colors and break them into 4 more, so a total of 16. But they all can kind of contribute back to these 4 basic personality things. The reason why I like what's called real colors is not everyone knows what a sanguine is or a melancholy or anything like that. And sometimes there's some personality colors that talks about dogs and otters and lions. Well, I used to use that one a lot. I think it's called Smalley, the Smalley one. And that his test is actually the first one in here. The columns ones actually is his test in that. But this young woman was really upset at me because I kept calling her a dog, because she was a dog personality, but she was very offended by that. And so we're using colors because no one really gets offended by your blue or your green or whatnot. And so we'll see, but times are changing. So right now we're using 4 personality colors because it's the safest in that. Could someone read out loud Psalms 139, 13 through 18 for me? That box right there, bottom 5.1. You made all the delicate intercourse. I knit me together in the womb.
Thank you for making me so wonderfully complex. Your workmanship is marvelous. How well I know it. You watched me as I was being formed in utter seclusion. You watched me, wait, I already read that. As I was woven together in the dark of the womb, you saw me before I was born. Every day of my life is recorded in your book. Every moment was laid out before a single day had passed. How precious are your thoughts about me, O God? They cannot be numbered. I can't even count them. They outnumber the grains of sand. And when I wake up, you are still with me.
So first question, what does this say about God? What do these verses say about God? His characteristics. What? Yes. It's intentional. It's not random or by accident. Yep. What else?
Detail.
Yep. Details, yeah. It's interesting phrase, knit together. Sower. Yeah. Yeah, what's interesting is I haven't had a lot of experience in knitting, but I heard that if you don't know what you're knitting, it's really hard to know. Like if you want to build a scarf or a hat or whatnot, it's better to know that before you start versus I'm just going to go ahead and start knitting and then, oh, this looks like a scarf. I'm going to go ahead and finish it as a scarf. The proportions are wrong and all that. So there's some intentionality details, but there's also kind of an overall purpose in that. So what does this tell us about us, humans? You guys can put in the chat if you can't hear me, Utah.
Yeah.
We have purpose, okay? Given by, yeah. And that's a big thing that we need to kind of remember is our purpose is given from God or given by God versus we're going to discover our purpose on our own outside of a relationship with God. What else? Like verse 16. What do you think? What do you think he's trying to say in verse 16? The silence doesn't bother me, just so you know. What do you think? I mean, it's pretty plainly, but what do you think it means? And why is that important?
It's kind of like a comforting thing.
Okay.
Like everything we do is already planned.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's part of God's plan. He knows it. He knows what's going to happen. And this is an important factor. If he knows what's going to happen in our lives, he probably gave us personality traits in order to accomplish that, in order to make that happen. That's that intentionality, detailed, vision kind of aspect of that. So what really happens is when we focus on our mistakes or, oh, I don't like that about my personality, maybe that's something that God knew we were going to struggle with in order to accomplish this or whatever else. He kind of has this divine purpose. And so I always want to bring back to this verse because it's not, I know for me, like I would love to have this personality trait more and less of this particular personality trait. And you're going to see that once we see strengths and weaknesses in each personality, but there's a very specific reason why God shaped you the way he did. And knowing that and seeking more and more information on that is really going to help you versus I just need to quench this. And so God recorded every day in his book. So not only does he know what's going to happen, he kind of remembers it. Every moment is laid out before a single day has passed. And so this is kind of setting up, okay, the personality is the one thing underneath, it's basic. You can't do anything. You can't receive it. It is something that you are born with. Spiritual gifts are received afterwards. Strengths, weaknesses, those are skill sets or abilities that can be added later. But this is in your DNA. Your goal is more to manage it and discover it rather than I'm going to go ahead and kind of get a new personality trait, no matter how. Now, here's the thing. If you've taken this before and your personality trait has changed, it might be because you can kind of read between the lines. This is more blue answer, and I don't want to be blue, so I'm going to go ahead and answer it this way. And also, your particular mood when you take a test directly affects your personality things. So this is a simple basic guide rather than the Bible itself, as in, oh, I'm locked into this on that. And that's one of the reasons why if you maybe take it in high school and you take it again in college, your personalities change because you're still kind of discovering who you are in that. All right, flip the page. Yeah.
Real quick, I love this quote. So that's what calling when your life is already after.
That's very good.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. Okay, flip the page, 5.2. So knowing your purpose is not to pigeonhole you. It's like, oh, I'm a blue or I'm an orange. That's just going to be forever. But it's also not to manipulate other people, even though it's hard, using personality of someone else. So it's a tool to help you, particularly with interpersonal relationships. It's a tool to help you. Why do I always struggle with this aspect of life? But it's not necessarily a tool to control or to hurt other people, because like all things with knowledge, if you know more about another person, you can sometimes easily push their buttons. You can easily manipulate them or hurt them, knowing if I say it this way, it will hurt them more in that. So if you have your pen, go and grab a pen. There's that little fun little activity. Go ahead and activity number 1, write your first name with the opposite hands. So if you're right-handed, use your left. If you're left-handed, use your right. So just your first name. If you're really good, use your first and last name. I see some struggling.
No.
Okay,
Oh, the eagle.
nailed it.
You only have 2 letters. No.
Yeah. So this is just a fun thing just to say, when you are using an opposite colors personality, so all of us have all 4 personality colors, but we have 2 dominant ones. And if we're using our non-dominant colors, it's like writing with our non-dominant hand. It requires more concentration. It's probably slower, and it's probably not as good as quality. So here's the thing. Let's say you're a blue personality, and blues are the people. They're the counselors. They're very focused on relationships and wonderful, loyal people. But if they are part of a manufacturing job, or if they're part of a job that has to make tough decisions that could hurt people, or you have to be mean and you have to evaluate other people, it's probably draining on that. So that's why, like for teachers, there's a personality color that thrive in teachers, and there's others that it just drains them by the end of the day. So when you're thinking about your career or all that, if you're drained at the end of the day, it's probably because you have to use your opposite personality colors, and it just takes more concentration and effort to make it happen. That, for those of you who have not taken this second activity, but someone spot the fly in activity number 2. If you've already seen it, don't say it, but spot the fly in activity number 2. Let me know when you have it. You let me know, Utah, if you have it. Anyone see it? All right, Becky, why don't you show it? Show what the fly is. Yes, it's the word fly. Yeah, and so personality colors like blue and like orange, they see it better because it's more outside the box thinking, because green and gold are more direct or literal. So they're thinking, oh, I need to see a fly. I'm thinking a fly that buzz around or whatnot. And so just even personality colors, you see the world differently in that. Doesn't mean one personality color is smarter than the next. I just want to point that out. But greens tend to be more in engineering, detailed people is needed. They think their minds think like a computer, so it's not going to be as abstract with that kind of aspect. All right. So last thing, flip it 5.3. So when it comes to understanding versus manipulation, when it comes to personality colors, is outside of the scripture itself, I've used personality to help my ministry more than anything else before. It has given me a huge understanding, particularly when dealing with teenagers or young adults. I used to respond to my personality color, and I'll explain what my personality color is in a bit, but I used to respond how I think they need to be told or whatnot. And I caused a lot more conflicts. When I started realizing, oh, people are different, and I started recognizing how people talk, how people act, and I changed my even speech patterns, even the tone or my body language to better reflect their language, it has really connected me more than anything else on that. So it's easy to manipulate, and you need to be very careful with that, but we do manipulate in a positive way all the time. There are some things where we manipulate or even have peer pressure in encouraging people to do devotions. Come on, I'll do it with you. Or how many have had some kind of fun competition, but it was actually for, like, you know how many times I've done a competition to pick up all these balloons after a big balloon mess or whatnot. Who can pick up 100 balloons? And it's simple like that. It's to grab, to do the work that needs to be done versus, hey, go do it. But manipulation falls under your intent. If your intent is to control, to hurt, to diminish, or anything else like that, a negative intent, now you're moving into manipulation. Understanding, if you want some kind of compassion, empathy, that's moving into that, the understanding how people are different. It's a fine line, and we can go into more details, but I want to keep going because it's time's sake. But the big thing is God brings us together, what Satan pulls apart. And a lot of times I really think Satan uses personalities, they use misunderstandings and ignorance to bring people apart. Even churches split over misunderstandings. And sometimes, and I've been a part of church for almost 20 years now, it's not a spiritual thing, it's a personality difference, and the church splits. And because this argument or this one interpretation or this guy doesn't get it, well, you don't understand him because, and so forth. So, yeah.
My intern.
Good thing.
Thanks.
Got it?
We'll figure it out.
Hey, we made it. You good? Okay. We're gonna just about ready to go over the 4 personalities. Okay, Keaton? So hold your breath until I'm done. Okay, here we go. Okay. Okay, so everyone, go ahead and turn to 5.8. Let me know, does anyone have any questions about the results? Okay, 5.8. Okay. So the 4 personality colors, okay? There's blue, gold, green, and orange, all right? And each of them kind of divides up. So the blues are the counselors. They tend to be more optimistic, particularly when it comes to people. They see the good in people first more than anything else. This is why blues are the easiest to manipulate. Again, you don't want to do that, but they also get their hearts stomped on because they trust first and then have boundaries second. And so what tends to happen is it's all about, oh, I'm going to see that. They're really good. I'm sure they're not going to do that. And then they get burned. And so here's what happens. You know, when you have a blue that has been burned a lot is they don't trust anyone because they've been burned so much in that. And that's kind of an unhealthy blue in that. So blues have to manage that trust in people way differently than all the other colors. That's why they're represented by the golden retriever, loyal to the fault. And they're the best pets. Sorry, dogs are better than cats. I apologize, but it's true. And so they're loyal, they're helpful. They want to help people because helping people generally fuels them more than the other personality colors. So the church is the perfect breeding ground of blues, if you will, in that. They're also willing to kind of share their feelings because how they talk is more feelings-oriented, emotions-oriented, expressive. They pay attention to body language more than the other 4 personality colors and tone. So when you talk to a blue, they're kind of the true blue friend is kind of their phrase. So they're loyal, they want close relationships. So think of them as Legos. If you ever played with Legos, okay, and you build the Lego like row here, you have about 8 Legos before it starts breaking off because it's just too much weight, okay, if you build like a row of Legos. And blues can have about 8 people emotionally in their life at any one time before people start dropping off, because they just don't have the emotional capacity to have a lighter friendship or just kind of hanging out. I'm not saying they can't talk to people or can't do small talk, but they want to be emotionally invested. They want to encourage, they want to know about your life. And so that's why they tend to have smaller groups of friends in that, or layers, or more, probably an easier way of saying it, a more defined layer friendship. So they have a close group, then they have somewhat of a crowd, then they have complete strangers. And it's because they just don't have the emotional capacity to not give it their all in every single friendship. So blues, what's interesting, doesn't really have, you don't see a lot of blues with huge families, because you can't have 10 brothers and sisters, because it's just emotionally draining when you're growing up if you're trying to connect with every one of your siblings. But that's not always the case, it's just generally happening. Blues they tend to put other people's needs before their own. So that's a huge problem that they tend to want to help. So they're wonderful helpers in that. They can result to bitterness or resentment, especially if you burned a blue. And they're like, well, I'm not going to give you that trust again. And they don't necessarily cut you off, but they hold bitterness and resentment. And they kind of hold that against you in that. They're incredibly sensitive when they see something is wrong, or someone is sad, or someone is kind of out kind of on their own. Blues notice that in a room and like, hey, blues like, hey, is there anything wrong? How can I help? Like, that's what a blue does. Other personality colors don't even know that person existed, or that person had a problem, or care if that person had a problem. But blues definitely gravitate towards that. And so blues, their emotional needs are peace and quiet, feeling worth, lack of stress, respect. They really want to make sure everyone in the room is included and feels at least welcomed. And so they'll put other people's needs before their own, just to help out with that. What's interesting is blues really enjoy talking to someone, hearing about their life, and then going their scheduled people. So when they tell a story, it's in chronological order when they tell the story in that, because that's kind of how they think. And they said, I felt this at this moment, and then this happened, and then I felt this, and this happened. And so they share their emotions, which means they tend to be longer storytellers rather than golds who are straight to the point in that. The other thing is blues really enjoy body language. So if you smile at a blue, all right, they tend to smile back. And if you do an upswing at the end of your sentences, like a positiveness in that, they really gravitate. So you're trying not to smile a little bit. Right. And that's just because blues, so with this little laughter and whatnot, blues want to feel that everyone is happy. And if you show that you're happy, it makes blues happy. That's how positive blues are. They're the glue of any group or any team. If there's a lot of infighting on a team, I guarantee you there's very little blues or not very strong blues in that. The blues really help with the cohesiveness of any team. All right, we good? Moving on? All right. Golds, keep on the page. Golds are the lions. They tend to dominate their personality, not because they are mean, although blues think a lot of golds are mean, but they're more doers. They tend to be pessimistic. So when they're doing it, they want to fix the problem. Usually they can notice a problem faster than any other personality color. They can see potholes in the road and say, oh, okay, we need to deal with this. Let's go and deal with it now. Oh, but it's really awkward, or, we have this other thing. No. So golds are all about, let's deal with the problem now versus dealing with the same problem 10 days from now. Blues are like, okay, let's avoid as much as possible in that, but not necessarily avoid because they don't want to deal with it. They want to avoid and figure out a way where they can maybe take that person off individually and talk to them directly versus trying to do as a group. So the Peanuts, have you ever seen Peanuts, Snoopy and Charlie Brown? Golds are Lucy. She'll hold the football to Charlie Brown and have him come up and She yanks it away from him and he falls down on his ground. He can't kick the football and she laughs every time. And that's just a Gold's weird sense of humor. But they think Golds are bonding. That is a bonding moment to Lucy because she's connected to Charlie because she really loves Charlie, but it's really fun. So Golds tend to be the meanies of the group just because they tend to think of the world differently in that. They're self-leaders, or they're born leaders, self-motivated. You don't really need to recruit a Gold. A Gold's probably doing 30 things already, so you don't recruit Golds. Golds recruit themselves, or they sign up for a team themselves. They'll find a way to add to the team or to lead the team if no one else is stepping up. Golds, we need to move forward in that because they're about progress, or I would say production over relationships. If they have to sacrifice a relationship to get something done, they're willing to do that. Blues would never sacrifice relationship, even if that means slowing down a project or not getting a project all the way done. Because Blues think more long-term as in, even after this project's done, I need to have a friendship with you. Golds don't think that way. They're quick, they rely on their gut. So they're quick decision makers. They analyze the data that you give them, and they'll easily make, okay, we're gonna do this, this, and this on that. That could get them in trouble, but it also helps them to move forward in this. They want directness, so they don't need to talk about small talk. You check, and you can be as mean or as direct as you want to them, and you're not gonna hurt their feelings because Golds are like, I'm perfectly fine making sure the project's done. Oh yeah, I was an idiot when you call them stupid or whatnot. Like it doesn't necessarily bother them. It doesn't mean they don't have feelings. It's if you really want to hurt a Golds, criticize their work, criticize their accomplishments, criticize what they're producing. That devastates Golds because they find their identity in the product rather than the process or the relationships. So they're all about loyalty. They have a strong sense of right and wrong. They want to have control or be in control because out of controlness, even fun out of control, is scary to them. And they really, really want credit for their work. So that Golds are straight to the point, and you say, hey, that's an awesome job or good job on that aspect. You've really filled up the emotional tank for Golds in that. You don't even need to know a Gold's name. Like they could care less if you know their name or whatnot. They're totally fine with, hey, chief, hey, you on that. Greens. So greens are the computers of the group. They're the beavers. They are the hard workers, but not the doers like the Gold. They are the thinkers. They want to get the right answer, even if that takes all week to get to that point. So they want to analyze. They never have enough data to collect. They always want more data, more information. They ask questions. And the problem is Golds are very in the box thinking. Greens are completely out to the box. Half the time, greens don't even realize that there is a box on that. And they're the inventors. They are the musicians. They are the people who are completely outside of the box and thinking of big ideas because they're always thinking of this next aspect. But they're very slow to express their feelings or slow to express their thoughts because they need more data in order to kind of think through that. Think of their mind like a computer. They keep a close watch on their emotions. They're not very expressive on that. Doesn't mean they don't have emotions, but they keep things pretty close to the chest, if you will. They love directions, step-by-step directions, sharing exactly what you need. Golds, if you want to give them a task, you give them a blank piece of paper and says, here's the goal, you take care of it. Greens, like, okay, no. What do you want me to do first? What's the second? Okay, how much? And they ask all these follow-up questions because they're not going to move forward unless they have all the information in that. So you want greens as researchers, as engineers, as people who are like very detailed, and they can sit in a computer and look at a database and unpack the data on that. They have no problem with that. Greens also tend to have a more sarcastic or weird sense of humor in that. So green-blue or blue-green is an interesting thing because their sense of humor doesn't always connect with the rest of the group, but they want to connect with the rest of the group because of blue, but the green filters this weirdness factor in. And so this aspect, and the other thing is blues, greens, they tend to overanalyze every relationship because they constantly need more data and they want data. So a blue-green, they need some affirmation, particularly as in, are we okay? Are we good? Are we good? Are you okay? Like, and that's just not because they're bad. It's just they need, you know, to make sure we're constantly getting data. Like, are we good? Because I'll change something if we're not good, because it's a blue-green's fault every time, even if it's not. So that's kind of the connection between greens and blues. Last one is oranges. And oranges are the otters. They are the fun ones. I always share oranges last because once oranges hear about themselves, they shut off and don't care about the other colors. And so oranges have to always go last. Otherwise, they won't pay attention in that. And so that's why we finally got to you, oranges, so you can wake up now. Oranges doesn't necessarily mean outgoing. Some people associate outgoing versus introvert as oranges. They tend to be more extroverts, but there's all different types of layers of oranges. Oranges' whole thought process on everything in life is answering this question: is it going to be fun? If it's going to be fun, we'll do it. If this is less fun than this, I'll do this, even if they're both not fun. So their whole aspect is, okay, trust me, work it out. Let's go ahead and have fun over here. Or if something's more fun, like here's what's interesting, especially if a very strong orange personality and they're in a friend group, they'll make plans with a friend because, hey, let's go fireworks on Tuesday night. Okay, let's do that. Come Sunday night, someone has a different plan. Oh, let's go over here. Let's go boating and we can see fireworks on the lake and all that. Let's do that. They'll drop that plan. They'll drop that plan for a more fun plan for a different group. Blues, that's just heartbroken. Like, I can't believe it. We made these plans and this whole schedule. And orange is like, yeah, but this is more fun. Why don't you just come with us? It'll be super fun. That's how oranges, gravitate. Oranges tend to be very dynamic and very charismatic, and they put a lot of sins are covered over due to their charisma in that. They make the mistakes or they stick their foot in their mouth all the time. But the charisma tends to, like, man, almost everyone really likes an orange, or they really hate an orange. There's no real middle ground for oranges in that. And just because they're a strong personality, they're fun, they're willing to kind of jump into being on the stage, but also there's lots of oranges that are not really extrovert. They don't want to be on the stage, but they'll say a little quip, a little fun, or they have a fun story, or they're just happy all the time. And it's not a caring happy like blues. It's like, this is fun, and I want to make sure everyone's fun in this room. They don't necessarily deal with peer, or they don't necessarily deal with internal pressure much. It's kind of like water off a duck's back. They just don't internalize pressure, but they do really gravitate towards peer pressure because they want to make sure that people like them. They could care less if they like people, but they want to make sure people like them. And so they are really tend to gravitate towards peer pressure. Okay, let's do this. And that's one of the reasons why oranges are the ones who gets in trouble, because golds tend to have this prank idea and oranges execute it and usually doesn't see all the way through and they get caught, while golds are already in a different cabin or whatever on that, because golds see what's coming. So they avoid the fine print. Oranges are like, let's just get going. If you are an orange and you finish this test, good for you. Not all oranges finish the test. They just kind of wing it the last 5 or 6 questions because they got bored on that. And they tend to be more optimistic because in life, and this is generally happening, and it irritates the other colors to no end, it does usually work out for them. It just does. Somehow, some way, it just works out for oranges in that. Either other people have jumped into their life or they figured out a way because they're very instinctual and they can switch on a moment's notice. And they really want attention and affection and approval and acceptance. It's all about other people giving them that aspect of, am I good? Am I funny? Am I liked? And all that. So they have no problem even making fun of themselves because they know that that attention and affection from other people is good. Okay, I'll share one last thing and then we'll go through some kind of questions. So on page 5.2, so this is just a general, very simple survey, but what they found is in the population here, okay, 30% of the population is oranges, 40% golds, 5% green, and about 15% blue, okay? That's what they found in America. What they found is this tends to gravitate. Oranges and golds are the highest. Why? Because in American culture, you really need that efficiency and motivation and being like a direct person. I'm just going to go out and take it. I'm going to grab that American dream. And so oranges and golds tend to thrive in America versus other cultures and whatnot. And greens are the smallest because they have to think through and make sure they get the right answer, but it takes longer. So not a lot of jobs, particularly if you're working at Starbucks, you need that coffee fast, even if it's not exactly 2 ounces that the directions say of milk into that coffee. And so you have to really be careful with that. But if you look at the church, orange stays the same, 30 to 35%. Greens grow a little bit. Blues explode and golds are so much smaller. Why? In the church. Why is it so drastically different in the church?
The church beats around the bush of a lot of things, and that's the Blue's personality. I don't want to offend anyone, but in the real world, gold, like that's just the real world. Nobody tends to beat around the bush.
Yeah, they'll fire
And they
you.
will, like that's just straight to the point. But the church is about it.
Yeah, I mean, the church thrives on community and relationships, and what some people call small groups, other colors would say forced intimacy. You know, there's this aspect that the church really wants, you know, what are you feeling right now? Let's go and be expressive in worship. That's when you know you really are worshiping, is when you're expressive in worship. Like these characteristics and these aspects to the church that blues thrive in, but golds, they actually come across as mean. They come across as selfish. They come across as, well, you're not here for the community, or man, all they want is their own way. And so they're actually discouraged in particularly in leadership roles. And you have to almost be a politician more than a pastor, especially if you're gold personality, because it's very mean or direct in that. Now, I'm not saying that's right. I'm saying this is reality in that. So golds can thrive in the church, but what tends to happen is they also tend to have a more mean personality or a more mean reputation in that. Other thoughts on this? Questions? Okay, so we're going to do moving around. For you on Zoom up there, you're just going to have to use the chat and kind of share your personality. So I'll explain directions and just use the chat feature and then just stay there. Okay, so you can take your stuff, but we need to sit in groups, and that's how we'll wrap up today. So if I could have the blues kind of in that corner over there, we'll put the golds right here, greens right here, and oranges back there. So blue, gold, green, orange. And just use your first dominant color. Question, yeah. Choose orange. Yeah, so if you're tied, just pick one. And then you guys just put in the chat your top 2 colors. And if you have your scores, put your score, like blue 27. So blue, gold, green, orange. You can take your book with you. Green. What? You green or orange? Is there any green? I'll be green. You're orange, aren't you?
Yep, but I'll pretend to be green.
Wait, we'll see. Okay. You're gold? Any other golds?
Gold
That's it. Okay, if you're orange, move away from blues a little bit. Let's separate them. That's all blue. That's why I put them down there.
Yikes.
Kyle, you literally declared that word and said orange. Well, I did, but blues are. Look at the.
Oh, yes.
What? There's no greens. Are you gonna be going? Okay. All right, go ahead and share in your groups. Share the number, your score. So if I'm blue, what's your number? And whoever has the highest number is the leader of their group.
I'm 51.
41.
I'm 52.
What? What's the number? Orange.
Shelby has something.
49.
Wait, what are you on?
Okay.
38.
Oh, sorry, that marker goes down.
Did you do it?
Huh?
You do it?
Oh, wait, that's orange.
Am I the leader?
It's really, this is.
All right. So here's what you're gonna do. Blues, you're gonna have to hurry because there's a lot of them, but who's your leader? Okay, Shelby. All right, so who's your guys' leader?
I.
Okay. And online, as you can see, we have, oh, I'll scroll up. We have,
Yeah.
all right, so Keaton was an orange. All right, Frank, gold blue, Millie, blue orange. Okay, 48 and 33. Okay, good. You guys just hang out for a little bit, but we're gonna give you 5 minutes. All right, here's what I want you to do. In your teams, work together, okay, and come up with your colors, strengths, all right, needs and wants. So strengths, needs, and wants. We'll give you 7. All right, strengths, needs, and wants.
Yes.
And then you guys can, in just a little bit, kind of put it in the chat. Strengths, needs, and wants of your color.
Write it down, like. Needs.
Yeah, think about your person.
None.
Strengths, needs, and wants based on your personality.
Want. Power. Yeah. We're loud. Be a strength. Pretty difficult. That's pretty difficult.
Easy to guess.
What's a strength?
We finish people's.
Nice.
That's strength.
That's a strength. That's
I don't know.
for us. For us, that's a strength.
We're not putting weaknesses.
Strengths, needs, and wants.
We want.
No, I definitely like.
I don't like it.
I'm really not orange up.
I like
Want
it.
to fill.
Yeah.
Like,
I love this.
good one, Mike. Good one, Mike.
Yeah. Thank you.
Strength. We want to.
What's the one word I would like to be honest?
There you go.
What a strength. I think that's like. I said the word want. Sorry, I tried to put that in there for.
You like to do what? To be
I was the male. I feel like I don't have to get it. What I would have said, like,
What's the word?
We're all so alike. There's so much
What's the need? Yeah.
It's not for me. Yeah.
Yeah, like if there's a natural leader.
We're very like that.
Blue, orange, and white. Blue, orange, and white.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Fans. Constant cold air.
It's a nice drift.
Yeah.
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 All right, what do you have? Money, we need money. We do need money. Should put that on camera.
What? I'll share at the end.
Because he's like, I made up my own color for me, my own personality.
I'm purple.
Yeah.
I'm beyond personality.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, for now. That's what's smart, very well. Probably, damn, like, this is our group, you know?
But we don't have women.
I don't know, we need that.
Do we? Where's that in there? We should make a fourth column say to me. Special to
Yeah. I guess, I was validating.
I have way better handwriting than you. Thank you. This is ridiculous.
Yeah. What? I haven't seen him yet. He might be. Kind of hide.
Orange all over me. Don't look.
He's kind of hides in his office. About one more minute. One more minute.
Like, what do you want?
You guys are just so strange.
What do you want? Food at your mom.
All right, go ahead and finish up. Finish up.
What do you want?
And then the leader of each group will either assign themselves or someone else to present. All right.
I stole the power.
So the leader of each group will either assign themselves or someone else to present your answers to the room. That's yeah.
You gotta do it.
I'm beyond personality. I'm purple. Yeah.
That's the man.
All right, blues are gonna go first. Come right up here.
Who?
Blue.
Why don't we go first?
Oh, orange is always gonna last.
Oh.
Guess what, Kyle? Fine.
Okay, we walk right up.
Or actually, you can go right here if you want. Either one. Either one. Okay.
I'll just watch the TV. I'll just watch the TV. I'm just gonna watch the TV.
Hey, nice and loud. Go ahead.
Hey, our strings that we came up with were loyalty, positivity, expression, validation from people, and understanding. Our needs. Yeah, they're not.
My class.
Keep going.
For needs and inclusion, we also wanna feel like understood by others, and we want peace, also connection and deep relationships for our need and our want. And then I want unity and worthiness.
Good. So this connection, deep relationship for both.
Honestly, all better. Yeah, it is.
What do we notice about this list?
Looks way too
It looks really nice. Yes. No. Blues really want things to look nice, whether it's pieces of paper or graphics
No, I'm
or
not.
their own handwriting in that. Yeah.
I'm not a
What else?
blue.
You said something else?
Yes. No, that is absolutely true. Blues will always not have a long wants column because it's about everyone else's wants first. So thinking about their own wants, so who's unity is not even about yours. It's not even your want. It's about other people's wants. And that's your first want. Hey, you do. You do. Okay. Okay, that's right. Do you hear that? Okay. Here's the other thing. Is any one of these could be in any category, strengths, needs, and wants, right? Could they all be mixed together? Why? Why did you do that for blues? But you'll see in the other colors that is definitely a separation. Why? Yes. Yeah. Your adaptive peacekeepers. Yeah. All right. So just a couple things. You have validation, understanding, and then understood. All right. Okay. Okay, did you get that? All right, you guys say that or no? What? Okay, go ahead. Sure.
So we have understanding of we all understand, but we understand.
It's mutual respect if you can both be understood in what you're communicating, what you're feeling. Absolutely. Couple of things I noticed is when someone gave a suggestion, every single person had physical head nod. And someone said, absolutely. All right. In that, because even giving suggestions, you need validation. Yes, you did a good answer in that. Yeah. Was there any disagreements?
No.
No, because you're not going to share something that. Yeah. And that's kind of how blues operate. It was a fun experience, and I'm going to even suffer myself just to make sure it's a positive experience, maybe not fun in that. But it's connection, expression, empathy, and all that. Do you naturally do these eyes or these circles?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I didn't know if it was a presentation thing or is that just your natural camera? Okay, something that little heart. Okay, I'm just kidding. All right, goals.
Wait, was there
Oh.
any words on
Yeah, Millie, do you want to add anything for blues? Okay, all right. Let's go golds next.
that? Okay. Are we putting this up on the?
Here, we'll go over there.
No sticky. No sticky.
Oh, look how big your right.
Okay, who's the gold over there? This black. Okay, we got you. Okay, notice we don't care what our handwriting is. Although mine is better than. Our strengths are that we are dependable, we like to get things done, we're decisive, leadership, taking charge of something, or achievement oriented. Our needs are that we want structure or a plan, we want loyalty, and we want information, or you need information in order to make good decisions. And our wants are to be in control, have a deadline, to be appreciated, to be able to plan ahead, and to not be categorized as needs.
Yeah. 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 What do you notice? Very good, very good. What do you notice about this one? Very even. Yes, even number of answers in that. Goals love balance. That's their sense of justice. In that is the balance aspect to life. And so they want that. The other thing I noticed is goals probably look at their book more than anyone else. Or just don't even have it. Goals, both of you were looking in your book to make sure, is this right? Is this accurate? No. Because they want to give the right answer. But they have their answer in their head for book or their book for validation. Is it in this? Yeah. So it's just an interesting aspect. Goals probably could be as well. in that. There's time to spare for goals. And that's how blues and gold operate differently. Gold probably, if they had a bigger group, and not everyone would share, but each one come up with their own list or add one thing. Blues, they need every answer is validated first, which adds to the thing, right? In that, yeah. If we had more time, we could say, okay, we'll have some disagreements. All right, oranges, come on up. I'm super excited for this.
Okay. Hello?
Yeah, so
This is here, I got you, Ruth.
So, thanks. So our,
Here, I'll hold it.
okay. So our strengths, as you can see, we're all male. Sorry. Sorry. Didn't write that. We're loud. We're fun. Michael wrote built for tough.
Yep.
Our needs, we need attention. Toyota marathon. No, Toyotathon. We need AC and fans blowing on us all the time. And then apparently money. All right, our wants. We want to be popular. We want food and to be liked. And then we have another category here. Okay, go ahead. We have demands, and we demand respect at all times. Thank you. That is our presentation.
No, keep it up. Keep it up.
We demand, that's right.
Go the other way too.
We
Okay.
both of them.
Okay, what do you notice about this list?
It makes zero sense.
It makes great
Now,
It makes great sense.
Wait, hold on.
That's not for you guys.
Wait,
It's
hold
not
on.
for you, it doesn't matter.
Wait, wait.
That's not for us.
No, hold on.
Ask your question. Doesn't matter. That's the answer.
Actually, no.
To you guys.
That's the point.
To you guys.
The fact that we're talking about it right now succeeded.
We won. I'm like, you lost.
You're literally
We won. We won.
That's the whole point. And everyone is laughing right now because we're talking about this word that literally doesn't mean anything.
Yes, it does. Greatest Marcel on earth.
Okay, there you go. If you want the conversation to stop, you just simply agree to an orange and then we move on. They love the argument. They love the fighting. They love it because it's enjoyable. The first answer that they wrote down was male. Now, it happens to be that your group is all male,
Yep.
but he's embarrassed. Because it's technically not an orange. We put him as an orange, right? Is your first one? Yeah, what's your real first one?
Blue.
Yeah. Yeah. But they put the first thing they did was a joke. Okay.
No, it's real. It's real.
It happened to be accurate in this situation, but that's not all oranges at all times.
Yeah.
So Frank, you put for goals online, it says getting things done, leading people, taking charge, need structured wants, appreciation, control. Yeah, that's accurate for this. The oranges, they could care less if they have finished assignment or if you understand them, just as long as it's fun. All right. So they made it fun for them. They were smiling to themselves when they created a new category. All right. They're like, oh, this is going to be great. This is great. Let's reveal it in the middle of our presentation. Because that's what oranges do. Like it's enjoyable. It's fun in that. Oranges have a lot of hidden jokes. Yeah. It's all recorded, just so you know. I can put you right here, so you can't hide. But yeah, attention. You put AC and fans, air conditioning and fans as a need.
It is a need.
All right. How is it a need for an orange personality?
I literally cannot figure out. My interns left it here.
That's true.
Okay. So he made a joke or a statement to bring other people into the conversation by explaining it in that. So yeah, I mean, none of this is wrong because there's no right or wrong answer in this.
Thank you.
So that could be a need in
Yeah,
that.
that's a need.
What's the difference between the demand and wants and needs?
We don't really know. We just demand this. We just demand.
This makes sense to us, guys.
Yeah. Okay, good.
It's okay.
Okay. And Keaton, what were you? Yeah.
Keaton, you said orange. So Keaton's an orange. He said strengths would be outgoing personality, willingness to try anything. Yes, oranges they have no problem being the trier, if that. Constant approval. Yeah, always going to be disapproval from somebody. Yeah, they both want approval, but they're also hurt when they don't get disapproval. Like when other people don't like him, or particularly a group, that hurts more than a gold. Gold's going to make that tough personality, even if the group is not going to like that personality or that person, because in their mind, they made the right choice. And the right choice isn't always the popular choice. Okay. So go grab your books. In your group still, but grab your books again. Dalton, do you know where your book is?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're gonna need a book.
Yeah.
We're gonna zip through this. We're gonna wrap up here. So if we had greens, okay, what I've noticed in greens in that we don't have that is if I would have given greens like this, right? 90% of the time, if I give greens this sheet, what would you think they would do with them? Yes, they would literally rip it or fold it so it's a straight area. This would drive them nuts in this, on that. Oranges probably didn't even notice until you've already written that you don't have the sticky sides. Or do you? Yeah. You can spend for yourselves. Yeah. So greens, they're going to do very answer, and I've seen it where greens. The most I've seen it in 5 minutes is 5 answers. And that's because they just have a hard time of really defining what they want for their answers in that. The other thing is, in the orange group here, one of them suggested an answer, and another one says, okay, how can I just put one word down? Like they wanted to concise their communication tool to just one word in that. Because oranges are all to the point, similar to golds, but oranges are more fun oriented and golds are more precise oriented in that. All right, so turn to 5:15, we're going to zip through this. As you can see, greens and oranges are more outward expression, and blues and golds are more inward expression. And then but oranges and golds, they deal with anger more, and blue and greens deal with fear more in that. And it's just basically how you express that. I wish I could get into it, but I'm going to zip through this. As you can see, what you need to talk about blue versus a gold, orange and green, and think how to speak to them in that. This is something that if you really want to particularly increase your interpersonal skills, especially if you have a job that deals with 2 things, 1, recruiting, or 2, leading big groups of people, knowing how different languages speak drastically helps and improves your interpersonal skills, but also your conflict management. There's a lot less conflict that happens when you're speaking different languages, and you can switch back and forth based on that. So it just takes some skill set. It also just takes some practice in this, but oranges speak totally differently to greens. And if you're in charge of them, like in a classroom setting or a work setting or something like that, it really kind of fuels them in that. Then flip your page. Under stress, as you can see that greens and golds and blues and oranges all have eternal stress or internal conflicts that are different. We're going to move forward. All right, flip to 5:22. We're almost done here. Colors and conflict. So golds are blunt and direct. So they want to control by the anger and power. Like they're going to, like I'm in charge or I'm expressive in my anger. And that's when you really get a gold upset. They're going to express, they're going to probably do threats. If you do this, this is going to happen or whatnot. But they're all about being blunt and direct. That's why you can criticize a gold, like, man, you were stupid, or man, I don't think you know what you're doing, or anything like that. And it doesn't necessarily bother them because they'll return it back to you. And so golds are probably the easiest to deal with conflict, but it doesn't mean it's the easiest that will solve it. It just means you can be very direct and blunt with a gold and not necessarily shut them down. Oranges, here's what's interesting. Oranges, it's like someone slaps you in the face and then runs away because it's all about their needs. So oranges are going to vomit, they're going to spew, they're going to yell.
And then they feel so much better because they released it. And now there's no conflict. So that's why they tend to trample blues, because like they'll send this nasty text message, or they'll confront you and say the worst and meanest things, but they've just released it all. So now they're good. So we're good, right? And they have they don't naturally follow up to make sure that other person understood them or resolves the conflict, because they're all about just kind of getting it out. Blues, what's interesting is there's a little volcano in the corner there. That's because blues bury as much as they possibly can for eternal conflict, particularly with family, but they bury until they can't bury anymore. And then it's like a volcano and it literally erupts. And so you don't want to be around a blue that's erupting, because they're going to keep track of every wrong you've ever done to them your entire life. And they're going to bring it up and share it. And they're going to say things that are going to be the most hurtful, because they know what's going to hurt you more than the other colors. And so their tongue tends to be very vicious, but you're not going to see that unless they've gotten to the point where, okay, this enough is enough and I'm going to explode. And usually it's about 5 or 6 conflicts in before they do it. So it's not about the current conflict. It's about what you did 2 years ago or something like that. And because blues just don't want to deal with it unless they absolutely have to. Greens are, what's interesting is they avoid. So they don't bury, they avoid. And if they never deal with a problem for the rest of your life, that's fine with greens. Not because they don't want to deal with a problem, but because by dealing with a problem, it slows down production in this other area. Or they know greens naturally, and I'm saying intelligent-wise, naturally believe they're smarter than the other colors. And intelligent-wise, in most cases, they probably are. And so they're going to use their intelligence to dismiss you. And why would you argue with someone who's less intelligent than you? It's just not efficient. It's not worth it. So they just move on. They just avoid in that. Again, I'm not saying that greens are better. I'm just simply saying that's what they think. And they tend to be more in the engineer field, the data field, things like that. And that's how they handle conflict. All right, moving on. We're going to biblical examples. Blues. You are Abraham. If you really want to study a blue, go ahead and read the whole story of Abraham in Genesis 11 through 23. It's one of the reasons why God challenged Abraham to sacrifice his son. It wasn't just because a father and a son relationship, where that's a big part of it, but it's also because Abraham cared so much for other people. He cared for his cousin. He went to Sodom and Gomorrah to kind of free people and all that, because it's all about relationships. And so sacrificing a relationship that God asked him to do, it's the ultimate sacrifice in that. It's not just a father-son sacrifice. It's even on a deeper level when you include personalities. Greens, Moses. Moses is literally talking to a burning bush. He's literally talking to Jesus, or talking to God. And he asks God's question, are you sure I'm the right person? How am I going to do that? How am I going to tell him? Like for some reason, all the other personality colors, when they're talking to a literal burning bush, they're like, oh, okay. And there's no question about it. But greens, he has to know more information, and they self-doubt. Well, I'm not very good with words and all that, because greens, there's just not enough information. So study Moses. Golds, Paul, he said some really mean things in the New Testament. Cutting people off. He had a huge fight with Barnabas, right? Yep, Barnabas, and was totally fine just moving on. It wasn't until someone else got involved and says, hey, you really got to mend this relationship on that. Paul's all about efficiency. We're going to plant churches. If I have to burn some bridges to do it, we're going to plant some churches. But he is setting up, most of the Christian life is lived out through Paul's teachings in that, in the New Testament. And so Paul, although harsh, I don't know if the church would grow as much without Paul being involved in how he planted churches in that. I mean, he's the one who's like, we're just going to go minister to the Gentiles. The other disciples who were with Jesus for years were still focusing on the Jews in Jerusalem. But it was Paul who's like, no, we're going to do this. He caused a lot of problems with that. And then, of course, the best example, oranges, with Peter getting out of the boat. He was the only disciple who got out of the boat, didn't think things through. He was the only disciple who's like, okay, we're just going to try it. And it was also the only disciple that Jesus decided to build his church on was an orange, not a gold, not a blue, not a green, but a risk-taking orange who says we need care, we need something risk-taking, we need charisma, we need thinking on your feet, we need problem solvers that instantly can change things on a moment's notice. I'm going to do Peter, even though Peter was the only disciple who denied him 3 times.
It's a very interesting dynamic that Peter was chosen. Spiritual practices, needs, color combinations. I wish we could get into this, but we won't get into this today. The other thing is on page 530, there's discipline aspects, and I shared a little bit about this. So when doing kind of like if you're leading a discussion, whether you're a kids director or a youth director or whatever, what tends to happen is golds tend to answer first because they can instinctively give the right answer, and they usually set the tone. Blues, they kind of piggyback off the first answer and kind of share how their answers are similar and encouragement. Greens need the longest to just kind of unpack and get data, so they tend to take longer in answering it. And oranges, they'll answer soon right away, but then they stop listening to other people's answers in that, because oranges shared their thoughts and now we're moving on. So when you're dealing with discipline issues, just realize it doesn't mean they disrespect you. It doesn't mean they're a bad kid, but sometimes it just means we're not communicating in the same language. And so just be aware of that. So when it comes to ministry, that's using personalities can really help you with conflict resolution, but also how you preach. So if you are teaching a Bible study or you're preaching whatnot, if you can preach and connect to all 4 personality colors in one way or the other, man, it's going to be way more effective, and you're going to hit more home runs in that and have the gospel be a lot more clear. You can tell, especially sometimes you can't shut it off, is when a preacher is a certain personality color, they preach that way. And then if that's not your personality color, you start thinking about, well, all he says is the same thing, or I don't really connect, or it doesn't mean he's a bad preacher. It might mean your personality is not being fed or talked to. Final thoughts, questions? So for me, I'm a gold first, task-oriented, ready to go. And my second's actually blue. But in a church setting, I use more orange on that, because my role as a leader or as someone who is up front teaching, there has to be some kind of fun element. Otherwise, the oranges won't connect, even if it's right information in that. So I tend to be more orange in front of people, but my natural personality is looking for the relationships and the connections, and sitting down and talking to 2 or 3 people at most is just as fulfilling to me as a whole room. That's me. So last thing, raise your hand if your second color is green. Wow. No, and what about you 2? Second color green or 3?
Wow.
We've recruited a bunch of blues and golds and wow. Okay. Second color orange. Okay. Second color gold. Okay. Yeah. I'm missing the second color. Second color blue.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And I do think denominations also are a factor of it. I don't have data or anything like that, but in my experience, Mennonite brethren really gravitate towards blue, partly because we talked about before. More Presbyterians, more liturgical denominations attract more golds. Charismatic attracts oranges because it's expressive, and you can have ribbons in worship and all that. So final thoughts, questions? We good online? All right, let's have